My name's Craig Ayers. I was the 30th heart transplant at the University of Minnesota, and I was transplanted in 1984, 25 years ago. How I became sick was I ended up with some breathing problems. I went to my doctor. She did an EKG. She drove me over to a cardiologist. He took one listen to my heart and said, "You have idiopathic cardiomyopathy, and you'll probably need a transplant." So I was worked up, and I was 35 at the time, and it was determined that if I didn't get the transplant, I wouldn't live. I was a top lawyer in town, and I was moving to Chicago, and Chicago didn't have a transplant program. It was so new. In fact, there were only 14 in the country at that time. So it took a long time to get over the shock. I was waiting in the hospital, and I did receive notice that a heart was available one morning. And so I was transferred from Fairview over to the University Hospital. Up to that point, my condition had worsened to the point where I was on morphine shots every 3 hours. I could barely breathe. I was barely conscious. I'd lost a lot of weight. And yet I knew that suddenly there was the one chance in a million had come through. After transplant, I was enough out of the sedation that I realized I could breathe for the first time in a couple of years. And I actually had a full, clear breath. It was fantastic. I was single at the time, so I always say the transplant made me crazy because I remarried and had 2 children. And my children are now 23 and 20. So I've actually had the great pleasure of watching them grow and trying to get them off my payroll.
The constant has been the relationships with the patients and families going through this process. And to see them perhaps be near death, and through the gift of life and the process of transplant be restored to life and quality life is something I don't think I'll ever tire of seeing.
The name LifeSource really goes to the core of what we do. We are here for families of those who have lost individuals, and we are here for recipients. We are the hope that people who are waiting for transplants look to. We have a huge responsibility to serve them, to do all we can to find a life-saving transplant for someone who is waiting.
My name is Tom Cornell, and I received a kidney transplant on June 14th, 1989. When I was diagnosed in my mid-20s, I guess it wasn't a tremendous surprise, you know, because I'd sort of had these problems and kept an eye on it for many years, but I'm also a 25-year-old, and I just met the woman who was going to end up being my wife, and there was a lot of things happening, and all of a sudden this was a left turn into a reality that I didn't really want to have to deal with. As I was walking into surgery with the nurse who was escorting me in, she said, "Well, you've got a full house match." I said, "Well, what does that mean?" She said, "All 6 antigens matched." And what I've come to find out is that that's essentially like having a twin brother who's 11 years younger than me, 3 states away. And I mean, miracle is an overused word. So I say certainly at least on the borderline. I spent 2 weeks in the hospital after the transplant, and at one point the social worker came in and we were just chatting, and she was wondering if I needed anything. I said, "No, I'm doing great. I am curious though. Can you tell me anything?" And I remember the words as if she just said them 10 seconds ago. "Well, he was an 18-year-old male Caucasian from Michigan who was celebrating his high school graduation." And there's this pause. She looked down, she said, "And I think I've probably told you more than I'm supposed to." It's one of those things that you will likely never be able to pay back. And so the only way you can pay this back is by stepping it up and living a life that is deserved of this gift. I've tried to do things that are well out of my comfort zone. All of these things that I'm doing, I'm not doing just for myself. I'm doing it for a young man who turned 18 and didn't get to go any further.
So I always, behind my mind when I'm meeting with a patient, I always kind of wonder whether or not they'll be one of the lucky ones that'll be able to undergo transplantation or whether they won't be. And it's something that's always on the tip of my mind on each and every patient that I see and each and every family member that I talk to. Just hoping that we'll have a chance to for them to have a transplant and also to have a good outcome.
I'm Sonia Sitzman, and I received a heart this year on February 22nd, 2009. When I found out I needed a heart transplant, I was overwhelmed, scared, didn't know what was going to happen, you know, how long it was going to take. There was just so many things going on in my mind, pretty much overwhelming. I waited for my transplant for 4 years. The first year was all my testing at the U, and then the next 3 years were waiting for a heart. And at first, I was okay waiting for a heart. You know, I know it can take years or days, and I was just waiting maybe for years. So the first year, I was fine, and then the second year, it started getting harder, real hard. And then at the third year, I was starting to think that maybe I wasn't going to get a heart, so that was really, really hard for me. After my transplant, I was so excited to go home. It was like I hadn't been there in like a month and a half, so I was excited to see home, and I just felt like I was blessed, actually. Everything little was wonderful to me, like the birds or the flowers or the snow, anything, the wind. The weather changes. It's like I was grateful for everything. I call my donor my angel in heaven. My donor is really special to me and always will be special to me, and my donor's family is special too. I will consider them part of my life forever, and they're very important.
Of course, that's the greatest satisfaction, is being able to help people and to see people that are very, very sick become very healthy and leading normal lives.
I have led the most charmed, fortunate, amazing life since this transplant.